another Jam Sesh today, and it's the first Jam Sesh with Matt and Erica.
Yeah, it is.
We're excited
Yeah,
about
I'm excited.
that. You know, a lot of people don't know that go to the office, come into REV, that how similar we actually are.
They don't know we're best friends.
They don't know we're best friends. That's I'm still trying to find out if we're best friends or not. So I think we're pretty good friends. Right? I'm just messing.
Best, some would
best
say.
friends. Top three for sure. And actually, before we dive in here, Erica shared with me a long time ago this process called human design. It's like astrology, it's like enneagrams. There's another way to kind of understand people, and like I would love for you to explain like how similar we actually are, because I think people would actually enjoy that.
Yeah. So it's basically what the environment, the sky was like when you were born, and the time, the date, the placement of everything. And there is a 1 out of like 6,400 chance that you would even have one of these numbers in similarity with somebody else. Matt and I actually have almost our entire gene sequence, like all 64 like DNA strands, 2 strands of DNA, almost exactly the same. And whenever I read this, I actually had to go back because I thought I was reading my own chart. And I was like, how is this possible?
Sister from another mister.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what was going on.
Your sister from another mister, and you married my sister. So that all worked out well. Okay, so now that we're past that, I did actually want to have a conversation with Erica today. And again, these jam sessions, guys, are conversations that we have on a regular basis, whether it's within the REV team, REV family, or our clients that we think will support and serve you guys in your own health and healing journey. And what some people may or may not know is Dr. Erica had a pretty crazy experience happen where she got into a car accident. And we wanted to just talk about it a little bit in regards to kind of just our messaging with people about how every experience is really just an opportunity for growth and for evolution, for healing. And, you know, you had a pretty crazy, traumatic experience happen. And you're now several weeks removed from that. And it's almost as if it never happened, even though it did. And I know you have a lot that you went through and processed through, and we don't have to get into all the details, but I'd love to for you to just share with people briefly, you know, what happened and what was your first initial thoughts, and how did it evolve over the week, so we can kind of
Yeah, I love that. I would say that it's like everything. Whenever you say it on paper, yes, I'm trusting of the human body. Yes, I'm trusting of how everything plays out. Yes, I know everything is for me. But when push comes to shove and you're actually in that moment and you have to respond in that moment, I was like, I know that the work that I've been doing allowed me to show up with a lot of me responding rather than reacting. And the next several weeks just kept opening up like little windows of like growth moments is what I'm going to call them. Like, what do I feel in my body? Why do I feel it? And it was like really coming down to a level of like, I gotta really look at myself, how I move through situations, because these situations were a little loud for probably 2 to 3 weeks afterwards. So it was an interesting experience. I went in a car crash, and it was almost like in that moment, I thought I had been processing kind of in real time, but it wasn't until I started talking to like Roseanne and family members and friends and everybody asking me about the situation, and I realized how they maybe perceived a situation like that and how we perceive a situation like that was totally different. I call it trusting, other people might call it crazy, but it was absolutely something that I got to really look at, like, how do I move through stuff?
Yeah, you had an impact to your system, and there was obviously the physical energy from the car to your car into you, and then the emotions of that whole process as well. You know, you did what you had to do, from, you know, making sure everything was checked out, that you weren't bleeding internally. Maybe had a concussion, definitely had a concussion, and worked through that. But like, that was a massive energy and input to your system. And you're also talking about internally, it was bringing up other things as well. For people that have had accidents, traumas, not even physically, but emotionally as well, what were those first several days to weeks like for you, feeling in and tuning in to that energy shifting, not necessarily out of you, but integrating and processing?
Absolutely. Like, we talked about like real-time processing, and this was real-time processing. I went through a car accident, and literally whenever I woke up, essentially from hitting my head, I was like this close to the tip of the car and like this close to being like punctured in my heart by the door of the car. And whenever I like came to it, everybody around me is like screaming. And I realized in that moment, someone needs to be like okay here. I wasn't expecting it to have to be me, but the second that happened, I started to realize, like and we've been in a few situations where it's almost like people are kind of in a panic, and I look around the room and I'm like, the most regulated people are typically the calm ones. And I look around and everybody is freaking out, like screaming. People had thought I had like didn't make it through that. Basically, all the cars had stopped. And there was one lady that I will never forget in this moment. I look up and she was just asking me like, how are you? Can you feel your legs? How are you doing? And I realized she was probably the most regulated person in the moment. And then it was me. So I was like, so her watching this whole situation, she turned out to be an emergency room nurse. So
There you go.
goes through that every day. But every single day for me leading up to this point, I'm like, thank God that I had like the wherewithal to not necessarily, because that's how trauma happens. Like in real time, like if I would have sped off into like worst case scenario, that emotional impact would have affected my body. If I would have really went into what all this means for me, how this is all happening, and went off into that like sympathetic spiral, I can guarantee I would have had to be processing that whole situation much longer. But because in that moment I was like, this happened. I need to take care of me right now. And I started just doing a body scan. I took a few breaths, did a body scan, and I was like, I'm physically okay. Like I knew I was physically okay. And then I was like, I'll worry about all the mental emotional stuff later. So I think I kind of broke it off in compartments like that, almost in the very beginning of like physically, I have, my shin hurts, can't really hear out of my ear, possible concussion, things like that. But for the most part, I looked in and I could really tap in. And this comes from like years of like really tuning in with my body of like, typically my heart does not beat this fast. Typically my blood does not pulse this much in my hands. And I just started cueing myself into small moments and asking myself, am I okay? Am I okay? And I did a whole body scan and I was like, I'm okay. And in that moment, I just stepped away from the car, everybody else still screaming. I was like, I detached from the experience essentially. And then later throughout the weeks coming up to that, of course I was in some pain, but it was more the mental emotional component of like, I went through it and the main emotion that I felt in that was like helplessness. I was going through my car, my small Subaru, and a big truck was coming and it essentially like wrapped around the front of my car. And in that moment, I remember feeling, I'm like, I am so helpless. Like I'm a sitting duck, basically, is what I thought. Like they were coming one end down the street and the tail just kind of whipped. And I was like, so that's the emotion I was holding on to for several weeks of just like feeling helpless and almost feeling jumpy. Like I can tell when people hold trauma in their body, like we'll be adjusting them and they'll like jump. I would do that if I heard a car down the road or brakes or even just somebody screaming in the background, like or in the distance. I kind of would have that response. So I knew it kind of still lived there. And whenever I did like deeper work with myself, I would sit and I would do meditation and sit with it. And the main emotion that came up was helplessness. And it's interesting because I don't think the opposite emotion of helplessness is like worthy or anything like that. It's actually just stability is what I really came to see. So I would sit in meditation and see where in my body I was holding some of that helplessness. And I was feeling it, of course, mainly like in my head a little bit and in the pit of my chest. So what I would do is literally sit in meditation, kind of go back to that moment and feel like I was so supported, so stable, so loved, so at peace. And literally it started to change my perception because our nervous system doesn't know the difference if it's happening now or it happened 2 weeks ago. So I would essentially put myself back in all those feelings, all those emotions, and then just sit with the feeling of stability. And I gotta say, like every experience makes us and shapes us. I know that I did not have that level of stability in my system before this, or like groundedness even. I felt so different, and this opened, honestly, like a doorway for me to step more into that. And I think meditating 8 hours a day and getting adjusted,
That'll help. That
5 times a
might
week will
help
help
a little
too,
bit.
but yeah.
You said something so interesting, like that feeling of helplessness was inside of you, and who knows, was that helplessness only because of this experience, or maybe did you have experiences in the past that had you feeling that as well? I don't know the answer to that. Only you know that answer. If you've had an experience in life that was challenging or traumatic, maybe it brought up something, but maybe there's been things in our past that have been there, and just it's making me think about a phrase and a saying that our greatest challenges provide our greatest opportunities. And then when traumas happen, obviously in the moment you got to take care of yourself. You got to do what you got to do. It's like you're in an extreme situation. But what I feel like we have learned through our own healing process is asking the question, not why did this happen to me, but why did this happen for me? Car accident, breakup, losing our job. And there's no doubt there are a lot of things in the world that are awful. There are a lot of things that bring an emotion of sadness and just like, oh, that is the absolute worst. And I don't have the answer to why those things happen. I'm not trying to answer that. But in our own life, when things come up, I think it's a really important, healing tool that we can use of looking at things with that perspective of like, okay, this really sucks, but I bet there's a lesson in this. I bet there's a gift. And what I'm hearing from you and what I've heard in my own life and seen in my own life and seen with others is that the faster that you can get to that place of accepting, embracing, and then like having this plan of like, all right, I'm going to grow from this experience, the faster you're going to move out of it and actually get to where you want to be.
Yeah, that's so interesting you bring that up, because I don't know if I would have felt the clarity, groundedness, stability I feel now without that. And of course, what came first, the chicken or the egg? But literally right before this car accident happened, I was feeling so antsy about stepping up into new levels of abundance in my life and moving, and I just wanted to go really fast through it all. Like I was like, I'm ready, like let's go. And so much so that I started talking shit on my old car. And I'm like, this old car, I can't make the calls I want to make. I can't, connect with people the way I want to. It was very loud. It was an older car. So driving down the highway, I'm like, I need a new car. And I had literally just sent Lauren a new car. And I realized like in that moment, the way that I was going about things was so fast and happening now. And this was an opportunity to slow me down, which if that didn't happen, maybe another opportunity would have slowed me down. But it's almost like that slowness is exactly what I needed. And it opened me up in a way that I never would have expected. It's like I chose to lift a 50-pound weight that day.
Yeah. What would we say? Life gives you those taps on the shoulders at first, but if you don't listen, it hits you over the head with a frying pan.
Literally.
And Joe Dispenza in his work, he has this quote, and I'm gonna mess it up a little bit, but it's something along the lines of like, you can either make a choice to change something in your life in a place of discouragement and pain and suffering, or you can make it from a place of empowerment.
Yes.
And so my hope is through this conversation and this video that, don't wait to get in a car accident to look at your own stuff, to tune in. And that's what we're essentially doing. And believe if you get challenged that, hey, this is an opportunity for your own growth and healing. And I want to close off this conversation because you talked about, hey, this happened, you took care of yourself, you got adjusted, you did 8 hours of meditation. You're, I love you so much. You're not bird, right? You're a different bird, right?
I'm not sure everybody's doing that,
Not everyone is doing that. So there's like the extreme of what you can do, hyperbaric chambers, float tanks, all this other stuff. But like, reality, someone has something really challenging happen to them, whether it's an accident, losing a job, something that comes up for them, like what would you suggest for them to initially do? And then should they do over the next coming days and weeks?
Yeah, I love that. And we say this all the time, but like any symptom or anything that comes up, it was interesting because everybody around me wanted to identify with the problem essentially of like, did you break your leg? Did you puncture your eardrum?
Interesting how that happens.
Do you have a concussion? Yeah. And I realized like in that moment, those were like little opportunities that I was creating like an agreement with myself of either I had it or I didn't and how I would move. And what I realized with that happening so much is I just kept coming back to myself of just like, the thing that helped me the most is just like trusting that it was all happening for me and then not identifying with the wrong thing, but just identifying with like the physical sensations of it, like the 5 senses of like, what do I feel? What is going on? What do I hear? Like, and it would put me back in my body in a way of like, my body knows exactly what to do. So I think that it could be easy for a lot of people to say, I broke my toe. And I realized like, if I did break my toe, what is somebody going to do about that necessarily that I can't already do? So for me, of course, getting adjusted, hanging out with you guys, like I told Lauren this, I'm like, whenever that happened, I started hugging people, like literally if you guys have been in REV at any point in time. Like I just was like hugging people like nonstop, but I really believe like truly communication with like good community and just being able to like process that verbally was huge for me. But then other than that, like getting adjusted. Getting hands on my body allowed me to also feel into my body too, of just like being curious is really what I would say about all that. And I think to wrap that up is just being curious about everything that was going on, and then even being curious into how I was going to support myself. Like I was open to anything. I truly was. I was like, if it feels right, I'm going to do it. So I was doing a lot of like floating and hyperbaric chambers and being in a creek and stuff. But more than that, it was really just the foundation of trusting my body, and all those things are support.
I love that. And those are the things that people can do. I think the 2 things that you said were like, what made me think about is like, this happened and everyone was identifying with all this stuff, and you chose not to be a victim in that sense, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, poor me, this happened to me, and I get it. Like, maybe milk it a little bit with Lauren a little bit. Like, oh, babe, I can't move. Can you get
I need
that
you to go
for
to the
me?
fridge.
I just saw you getting up a second ago, right? That's fine. You can do that. But it's like you didn't identify as like, oh, this is just the worst thing, and like you really just took it like this is an experience that happened. So, which we talked about. And then the other thing is just being curious and being open to what the sensations you're feeling. And like, I think some people might have a challenge with like what that actually means. And from my perspective, and like correct me based on your own experience, like being curious of the sensations. A lot of people do this. We've talked about this, like pain that comes up, emotions that come up. We tend to want to like just like take a Advil or put an ice pack on it, or just like not focus on it, right? Kind of pushing it away, where instead of doing that, you felt it. And you didn't have a like, oh, that hurts, or oh, that's really good. It just is what it is, and it was that. And by doing that, based on my understanding, it brings that attention and intention of this amazing intelligence inside of our body to come focus on that area. That's like, again, that's what we're doing with the hands-on stuff, like getting your system to bring attention to this, allowing the flow of energy to move more efficiently. Once it's booking, it can go up to 250 miles per hour, these electrical signals, but we have to get into that state of just being open. I feel like you are really good at that. So I just wanted to touch on
I love that.
piece.
We actually had a client we had 2 clients actually that went through a car accident, like very similarly to the time I was in a car accident. And they were seeing me get adjusted, like, I was getting adjusted like
or day.
like every day, sometimes twice a day if I could make it in here. But
absolutely.
They started to talk to me, and she was like, every time I get adjusted, I feel like it's not even physical anymore for me. It's mental, emotional. And she was like, all this stuff comes up on the table for me. And I'm like, well, how often are you getting adjusted? She's like, once a week, sometimes every other week. And I'm like, I've been getting adjusted like every day. And I'll say this, the first couple days, absolutely all that stuff came up, but I actually went into it. And I think that comes down to like the overall, just like how you begin the intention of just like, I'm gonna move through this, instead of labeling and identifying, because that becomes its own pattern, that becomes its own story. And she had gone through several weeks of just saying, she's not strong enough to look at this stuff. And I was like, if you were to go through it, you may feel differently and see just how strong you are.
Whatever you say.
There you are,
There you are, and that's truth, right?
Yeah.
So I love this conversation.
Love it.
I think it's been highly valuable. Again, hopefully this isn't just reaching people that have just recently been in a car accident, but we've all had experiences, and I think just shifting our mindset to, hey, every experience is an opportunity. The greater the challenge, the greater the ability for it to create growth in our life, right? The 50-pound dumbbell gave you 50 pounds equal opposite of opportunity growth. And, maybe for you guys, making that place of an empowerment stand, like, you know what, today I'm going to lift a 5, tomorrow I'm going to lift a 10, then I'm going to lift a 25. So that way, when that 50-pound dumbbell comes, I'm ready for it.
Yeah, maybe not the uphill battle I would recommend for people, but yeah.
And it was absolutely perfect and meant to be, and I'm just so grateful you didn't get pancaked. You were all in one piece.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm better for it.
100%. Well, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this Jam Sesh. We'll have more of them coming in the coming weeks. Please please subscribe, comment below, share with a friend if you found it valuable, and we'll see you on the next one.